Central New York, and hello, hockey fans all across the internet, and welcome to the Central New York Hockey Report. I'm your host, Scott Kinville, and boy, do we got a fantastic show lined up for everybody tonight. I've mentioned this time and time and again. It's the most wonderful time of the year. I don't care. You can say that in December all you want. For me, it's October because hockey is certainly back, and we have got one heck of a show lined up for everybody tonight. Tonight is our Syracuse Crunch season preview show. Yes, indeed. And if you're watching on the YouTube channel, you can see on the screen that I have brought in the experts for tonight. Very excited for this show. Before we bring our guests in, I want to bring my guest co-host in tonight. Our guest co-host is the host of the Syracuse Speaks podcast. She is the Syracuse Crunch expert, if you ask me. She is the one. She is the only Alex Ackerman. How are you, Alex?
I'm doing well. How are you tonight?
I am fantastic. As you can see, I'm fired up. I'm ready to go. All right. And so I'm going to bring our guest right in here because, like I said, I've been looking very forward to this. Our guest is indeed the owner of the Syracuse Crunch. He is Mr. Howard Dolgon. Howard, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you guys doing?
I am doing fantastic. Thank you for coming on the show and taking the time to be with us. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
So I'm sure you are quite busy right about now, getting ready for the big start of the season, your 30th year in Syracuse.
You know, when people mention 30, you think for a couple of minutes and realize, wow, that's a long time, right? I mean, 1994, sometimes it seems like it was yesterday. And we got started on this back in 93, actually in April of 93. But in some respect, it feels like yesterday, and in others, it really feels like a long time ago. But, for me, at least, it's been a life changer. And I'm forever grateful to have had the opportunity to help bring a team to Syracuse and to have the kind of support we've had from our fans and our corporate partners to still be alive and kicking, in 2023.
Yeah, absolutely. And what a heck of a job you've done. You did an interview with Brent Axe a couple of weeks ago, and it was a fantastic interview. Great guy, by the way. And you had mentioned that the story of how the Crunch came about. And in that story, you had mentioned that prior to the Crunch, you were a promoter and that you were a big hockey guy. So if you could just expand on that a little bit more.
Well, from a hockey fan standpoint, I actually, my brother, my father, and I got Rangers season tickets. And I think it was 71 season, up in the blue seats. So we were up.
Oh, wow.
Real fans, the cheap seats, right? I think we were I know we were section 411, right? And they were probably led to close to every home game, for years. And I played hockey, not at a high level, but I just really connected with the sport. Wound up having a career in sports through PR and marketing, where I was representing, some major brands, including Wheaties, Gillette, MasterCard, and representing them in their sports sponsorship. So I was implementing and creating programs for them to build their brand recognition and whatnot for the company I was a partner in. So when the opportunity came to combine that passion with my passion for hockey and to actually take the big leap into owning a team or trying to own a team, I felt for me it was a real idyllic situation if I was successful. And it was certainly the only sport that I would have, taken a chance in an ownership position.
Yeah, it's an absolutely incredible story, and it's been said before with the city of Syracuse and the Syracuse sports market. Of course, the Syracuse Orange do take up a lot of space. Football and basketball are very popular. In the off season, you have baseball, which is very popular there as well. But you have made the Syracuse Crunch work there, and it's obviously worked very well for 30 seasons. So tell us a little bit about some of the different marketing strategies you guys made work throughout the years.
Well, when you say you have made it, I mean, I appreciate the compliment, but it's far from just me, believe me.
Oh, sure. Absolutely.
I mean, people know my name and, know that I took the initial plunge in and, have remained active. But I've been blessed really with not only an unbelievably loyal and energetic staff, but one that, has been with me a long time, many of the staff members. I mean, I grew up with Vance Liederman, and so we go back, I hate to say it, but over 60 years. I hate to say it, not because of Vance, but because of the aging process. Jim Sorosi started out with me as an intern.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah, we just celebrated. We threw a 50th surprise party for him the end of July. His birthday is August 11th, but we wanted to surprise him. Megan Cahill, Andrea Marino, up until a few weeks ago, Mark Hayes. So we've been real fortunate to have long-term people that have enjoyed what they're doing and believe what we're doing. So, but really from the get-go, and our philosophy was, and this is going back in '94, where very few sports teams in general were doing anything but putting games on and letting the fans either enjoy the actual game, whether it was hockey, football, basketball, baseball, and not supporting it with in-arena activity, creative marketing outside of the arena to try to, not only build your brand, but, try to gain fans and excitement. And from day one, we decided that, our quote-unquote expertise was building brands, doing big events. We did a lot of big boxing events over the years. We worked at the Olympics and the World Cup soccer. So we had seen things at a high level, and we felt that if we were going to bring a team to the market, we wanted the people in Syracuse to, not be stuck with a minor league label. I mean, we're a minor league team only because we're not an NHL team, but in no way, shape, or form did we want to behave like one. We didn't want to be corny. We always wanted our fans to get that major league experience. And that's why we took a chance in 2010, became the first team in the American League to put on an outdoor game. And it was a risk. I mean, we had no idea when we announced it that it would be as successful. We were hopeful. We knew we had the right people running it. And the difference that people really don't understand when the NHL does an outdoor game, it's the NHL staff that runs it from soup to nuts. We have at the time, I think I had 12 full-time staffers and interns. And we were running a full schedule of games in the arena. And now we had a special event. And, like I think I mentioned on Brent's podcast, we had prisoners shoveling snow because we had to, and building stands. I mean, and it was thankfully Joni Mahoney, who was county executive, was, terrific in providing help. Chuck Schumer, who was the U.S. Senator, was real helpful. The mayor's representative at the time was great. So everyone bought in. The corporate world bought in, and then our fans embraced it. And because they believed what we were trying to do, and I think to a degree, or to a large degree, appreciated that attempt. And they proved, that we're a big market when it comes to, supporting big events. And then 4 years later, we go to the old Carrier Dome that, building an ice arena is tough outdoors in February. It's tougher indoors in November when there's no air conditioning in the building.
Sure, absolutely.
I realize that. So we had to bring in generators. We had a fuel. I mean, it was and the toughest part about that was when that game ended, we had purchased 50 sledgehammers, and staff interns were literally chopping the ice because they had a basketball game there in 2 days. when we signed our with, and we knew it with the dome, they said, okay, you could start building the Saturday before because you need time to get the ice right? They said, but after that game, that ice has to be chopped up. So our staff was there all night long.
Wow.
But again, our goal was we don't want the people in the market to get the same old, same old. And we were going to be different. We were going to be edgy, but we also believed the hockey was at a high level. And now, 30 years later, Alex, firsthand, the hockey is so good. Like it's so good that if you didn't know you were in an AHL arena and you put Lightning uniforms on our guys and jersey uniforms on Utica, you think you're watching an NHL game on a lot of nights. And I don't think you get that in other minor league sports. Now you have college football, right? And there's a real disparity in talent. Minor league baseball, you don't get the kind of movement where players who play minor league actually, 90% of our players play in the NHL. I mean, that's a lot,
Sure.
right? So our fans are seeing the second best league in the world. We're better than the KHL, we're better than the Swiss league, we're better than the Swedish Elite League. It's a real high level of play, and it's a tough league to make the jump from either college or junior where you've had great success, and then you come to our league and it's like, why can't I score? Now we've had players that, have been, had tough times, both physically performing and then it's the mental breakdown.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And you mentioned with the outdoor game and the game at the Dome that the AHL does not contribute for the budgets for that, and nor do they contribute for travel budgets, which could really, you really got to be able to massage your budget, so to speak, when you're talking about road trips and stuff like that.
Yeah, well, we know like Vance Liederman handles all of our finances, and one thing about Vance, he started off as a collector, right, for a couple of big steel companies. Vance gets the money, right, and Vance gets the best deals. Like Vance will book the hotel rooms the minute the schedule comes out, right, and the flights and the bus trips, and it's all that, and that's part of doing business, right. And as our league expanded, our overnight road trips have increased. So we used to go to, Albany, Adirondack, and Binghamton. And between the three of them, we probably had, let's say, an average of 15 or 30 games total, right? 15 home and 15 away. Those are 15 non-overnights that we've lost. So, if you do the math, we're putting up, let's say, 30 people at least every road trip. There's per diem, there's hotel rooms, there's the cost of the bus. If you're flying, there's the cost of air travel. So our expenses just by those three teams not being in the league anymore have increased. But we've tried to keep our ticket price low. If you look at the league, we're probably in the bottom third. I think we've been fortunate to have great corporate support, so we're able to keep our ticket prices reasonable. But, costs go up. Our expense to Tampa goes up, our affiliation agreement, our rent goes up, which is normal. My salaries go up to my employees, which it should go. But it's business. And,
Sure.
You have to be prepared and do the best you can.
So that's
Howard.
interesting. I'm sorry, Alex, go ahead.
No, I was just thinking that you talked about those big events. You talked about how much the quality and the caliber of hockey has gone up. But one of the things I love about the fact that the Crunch is still a minor league team is that the heart just seems a little bit different than at the NHL level. When I think about those big events, you had Dan Smith going out there holding his daughter in his arms during player introductions, and all of those little moments that leave that mark on the team's events and kind of bring the fans into it a little bit more. And I just was wondering if you could speak to the importance of that type of feel that the Crunch has managed to maintain.
Well, I think it's great. The first year, I remember, we did a team lunch before the season, with the Vancouver was our partners, and it was all new to me. And just the game playing in the restaurant between the 22-year-olds, where they were putting tomato sauce on the other guy's shoes. It was really playful. And early on, we had players that would regularly have dinners at our fans' houses, and so the players have always felt a connection to the community, and it's interesting. Like, our players are constantly asking Jim Sorosi or our PR lady Megan Cahill or the person running our community, when they're not playing and not practicing, they want to do something with that impacts the community. And I'll never forget, we had a player back in the day named Brian Loney. He played with us, I think, the first 3 or 4 seasons. And unbeknownst to us, Brian befriended a young cancer patient here. And for a few years, would regularly not only visit him, but spend time in his home. So when he went through the chemo treatment, he'd be with him home. And Brian never told anybody until the family wanted to tell us the story. And that is more the norm. These players are, so humble. And I think that's different with hockey players is, they appreciate the getting up at 4 a.m. when they were kids and their moms and dads spending time in cold rinks. And, I'll never forget going back again. We did a team dinner, and 2 of our players, and Alex, you know the names, were the last cuts of the Vancouver Canucks. And it was Dave Scatchard and Tyson Nash, right? Two players who had really nice NHL careers. So Vance Liederman and I decided, you know what? They missed the team dinner. We're going to take them to dinner, just the 4 of us. So we went to Joey's, the Italian restaurant that was on Carrier Circle, and we get the menus and we're looking, and I'm just looking at the menus like, I'm a surprised look on their face. Like, I said, listen, don't worry about it. Get what you want. Like, we're buying you dinner. And they said, well, what are you having? And I said, I'm going to have veal parmesan tonight. And Dave Scatcher looked at me and said, what's veal? Like, and I know it's so taken aback, but smaller town, like, people come to Syracuse. Like, look, I grew up in Brooklyn, there were more people on my block, right, than most small cities. And so Syracuse to me was a smaller city. Mm-hmm. But you get players and you look at where they're from, and probably 80% of them, Syracuse is a big market. They go to the mall and it's overwhelming. They're young enough where they go on campus because, I think a few of them, I think it was Joe Motzko, wanted meeting a student and marrying an SU student. I'm not sure. I think Danny Walcott is, I don't know if she was a student, but married or is getting married. No, married a Syracuse, resident. And now he's had a home here for a couple of years. So, I haven't met a lot of the new players yet. I'll do that when I get into town tomorrow. But in 29 years to date, we have rarely had a bad egg, really. And we've never had one in the Tampa era, because that's just for them. That's a prerequisite. If it doesn't matter your talent. If there's an issue with your character, they'll never sign you. And they believe in culture, and they don't just talk about it, but they live it.
Yeah, that's incredibly important too. And you can tell it goes right through the entire organization as well, because certainly your team is right up on par with that as well. And I can tell you that my interactions with your front office, your staff, you've got a first class staff there. I can tell you that, my friend.
No, thank you. And, people, and sometimes I don't realize it, is during the season, we will play games as, Alex, we play a lot of Friday, Saturday night games intentionally because, it's a lot easier to draw a fan base than a Wednesday night.
Mhm.
So, our staff will start the week on Monday, preparing for the weekend games and doing everything else that they do. So normally they get in, let's say 8 o'clock, unless you're Jim Syracuse and you're in at 6:45 in the morning, right? And you're preparing, and by 5:36 you're out. Well, on Friday you get in at the same time. The game ends at 10. You're debriefing, doing what you got to do, and you're not out of the arena until 11:30 into your car. And let's say you're home at 12. So if you got in at 8, or let's say even 9, that's a 15-hour workday that you have to repeat now on Saturday. So you're working your 30 hours Friday, Saturday. The other 4 days of the week, maybe you're working 9 hours, 36. So you're almost 70 hours, and that's season long. Now we've given them off on Mondays now when they work Friday, Saturday, and we try to be as lenient during the off season. We give them a lot more time off because they're going to gear up for a season. And, it's not just the games. There's activities all week long. There's appearances. There's promotions. There's sponsors that, have, we have commitments in their program that we've got to do. And so it becomes sometimes, it's, when we're done playing, which we hope is not until the end of June, it's for a lot of the staff, it's they can finally sit back and relax, and then before you know it, it's October.
Yeah, absolutely. And I, obviously you don't see that on the surface as a fan, right? You just see the puck drop and you see the end of the game and you think that's it. But you're right. I mean, and the season's a grind. Let's just be honest. You're talking 72 regular season games, a couple preseason games, playoffs. It is a 6 to 8 months, just absolute grind. And, my hat's off to everybody working the 15-hour days, because that's got to be difficult sometimes.
And you know what it is too, is you work for a team, and what I love about our staff and about our fans, here's where it's very similar. I always said we were like the Green Bay Packers. Even though the fans don't have an ownership in the team, they don't own stock, the passion that they have is as if they own the team. And as an owner, you can't ask for anything more. And it's been that way, that our fans have embraced us in that manner, because the team has been, hopefully, and we have been accessible. The players are available, and but it's funny. Like, I'm thinking, and I'm gonna throw something out there that's so, like, I'm a fairly superstitious guy, right? So a few years ago, God, no, more than that, over 5 years ago, we were probably a month and a half into the season. We weren't scoring, like, we were losing. So Vance Lee came to visit me in Florida. We were literally by my pool one night, and he likes to smoke cigars. I'll do it every year, right? But he said, let's smoke a cigar. And so we had music on, and this song came on from the Dropkick Murphys. I'm like, that's our goal song. We're switching. And we went on this great run. I said, okay, we're going to keep it. Well, I think last year or the year before, Jim Syracuse came over to me and said, the players are asking if after they score, they can have their own song, right?
Interesting.
I'm like, fine, do it, right? Well, I didn't like, the results from last year, right? And Jim called me up a week ago and he said, hey, Wally and Dooney, they want to know. I'm like, you know what? We're going back to the Dropkick Murphys. Well, I said, you know what? Let them win games, and then we'll worry about It's like
That's awesome. What an incentive.
At some point, it's not a democracy, right? I love the guy. I'll do anything for him. You know, we've had some great characters. I mean, you know, like I actually spoke to Zdeněk Konopka a couple of days ago. You know, like we had, unfortunately, like we've got a great video planned and for the home opener, and the plan was we had arranged for Scotty Walker to come in, who was probably one of the first beloved players, Wild Thing, and we got a call from him 2 days ago that his son is playing in his first professional game in Kalamazoo. And he said, listen, I got to see him. I said, Scotty, I understand it. So I called up Z because we've been in touch, you know, over the years. And I said, hey, you know, you're not option B because we wanted to bring you in during the year, but I need you to come in if you could on Saturday. And he says, I would love to. You know, I'd love to, but I'm coaching. So find out. I said, look at your schedule, look at our schedule. But during the year, we're going to have a lot of people come in. But I think I've watched the video they shot. It's a 7-minute long video, but it's. I'm in it. Unfortunately, I'm in it. But it's actually really good, right? And it's really the right time to show it because it talks about the history and the characters, and when you look back, like. You know, early on, you had Walker and Baduk was like a cult hero before he even landed at the airport, right? I mean, it was unbelievable. You know, then, you know, you move on to Konopka and, you know, Morasti and Brandon Sugden and Jody Shelley. And, you know, then you jump into, you know, the Wallies and the Eric Nielsen's, and I'm sure I'm missing a bunch, right?
Angelitas.
Angie, I mean, but I'm thinking more of the characters, like,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and no one was a bigger, like, I can talk about Konopka for hours, the stuff we went through. Like, I would get a call, literally, every Monday from the head of discipline for the American Hockey League. Call me up, I'm like, Jimmy, what's up? It's your captain. I'm like, what's he doing now? He can talk all he wants during warm up, but he can't cross the red line.
Oh my God. The red line thing was crazy that season. Like he and Morasti used to police it. And boy, if you knew.
Every game I go see up or I say, like, Z, I don't talk all you want. I don't care what you do during love you. First one, yeah, no problem. I got you. Next month I get the call. It was unbelievable. He was, and I've taken him when he played for the Islanders. He came to my house for Thanksgiving one year. Him and Pierre Parento. And the funniest thing, one of the funniest dinners I had when Sugden was trying out for the Islanders, I had him come to my house for dinner. And at the time, I think only 2 of my kids were still living at home. So he comes to dinner. I think we had meatballs and spaghetti, and he goes into his mouth and just rips his teeth out. You know, right at the table. It's like, gee. So my kids were home. I think it was, I forgot who, but they were amazed. But you know, just like I'm so happy. Like I know Jimmy. Like we keep in touch with the alumni, and when Tampa won the cup the second time, and we were fortunate to be there and be in the locker room and part of the celebration. But let me tell you, and I know I've got to go at 7 shortly and I definitely want to rebook with you.
Absolutely.
I have a crazy schedule because I am literally just got back from Tampa. I've got to run out and meet somebody, and then I've got to come home and pack, and I'm on a 6 o'clock flight tomorrow morning. Yeah.
No rest at all for you.
No. I get more sleep on the airplane. And now I forgot, what was I just talking about that I forgot? We were talking about Konopka or
pulling teeth out.
Pulling teeth out, but something after that.
When the Lightning won the cup the second time.
Okay, thank you. So we were, because I live in Florida, I was a regular. And I was at the game, they're opening yesterday, and they're so wonderful. I had lunch with Julian and Matthew Darch. I sit in the suite with Steve Griggs, who's the team president, And it's the VIP overflow. So if you're a VIP, or they consider you one, and you don't have a suite, you go there. So the mayor was there, and it was great because they had a bunch of Hall of Famers from Tampa there. They had Wade Boggs, Derek Brooks, Ronnie Barber, who I've gotten to know very well, him and his wife. Wonderful, wonderful guy. And so for the Cup final game against Montreal, I was in that suite, and I'd driven up, and Tampa had taken the suite to the right, and they had, instead of selling it for the night, they reserved it. They had flown in all of their scouts. Because remember, the year before was the bubble, so nobody got to enjoy the championship.
Sure.
They flew in all of their scouts. They flew in our coaching staff at the time, Benoit Guru, Eric and Gio's, our goalie coach, our strength coach, Mark Powell. They brought in our trainers, our equipment managers. They flew in Vance Lehman, Jimmy Cirosi, and they were all there. And what a generous offer, because you're talking about hotels.
Sure.
And I remember getting a text from Liz Koharski. And Liz was, she used to work for the American League when Dave Andrews first came in as president, then wound up going to Tampa when Jay Feaster became a GM and stayed. And she's Julian Brisbois' administrative assistant, and she's wonderful. And I get a text from her right before the third period is going to start. And Ross Colton had scored the goal in the second period to go up 1-0, right? And the text is, and I remember it, if we are fortunate enough to win this game, wait until the cup leaves the ice, and then you're going to be led to a special elevator to go down to where the player locker room, but there was a huge lounge attached to it. So we're watching the game, and there's a minute left, and Montreal pulls the goal in. Like, our hearts are racing, and McDonough blocks the shot, and it goes out of the zone, and we are freaking out. So happy. Like, and the happiness is because we love those guys. Like, I love the Tampa people because of who they are. When we go down, and I'm thinking, okay, so now we're there, and, Stacey Roos is down there, but I'm thinking, maybe we'll wait like a half hour. Well, 5 minutes later, the music comes on, the players are all in their uniform, and out comes Stamkos with a cup. And it is like unimaginable, really. Like, it's almost surreal for a kid. It's a dream, I'm telling you.
Sure.
And we're like posing with a cup, we're drinking, and here's the best part. Andre Palat had not played in Syracuse for probably 5 years, right? At least. And he sees Vance and I, and this guy's soaking wet with champagne and sweat, uniform on, and he yells, Syracuse at the top of his lungs. He grabs us, and Cooch is grabbing us, and big Eric Chernak, and they loved and remembered how they were treated in Syracuse. It was so wonderful because you wonder, they leave, do they forget about it? They don't. And Ross Colton went up to Benoit Gru and said, you made me this player. You're the reason why I'm here.
That is awesome.
And it was wonderful. And we're spoken to guy Cooper, and he's got his arm around us. And it's the experience from the front office to the fans to the community that is all so important, because we want players wanting to come to Syracuse. The facility is important, the way they're treated. And I'll just give you one final example before I go, because it's a story most people may not know. A number of years ago, the Lightning were flying for a game in Ottawa, and they were fogged out. And ironically, the nearest airport was Syracuse, the private plane.
Okay.
And they wound up landing at 12:45 at night. in the morning. And Julian Breswell called Jim Sorosi. And Jim called the hotel. At the time, we were dealing with the Crown. Got the rooms. Every staffer woke up, got in their car, and picked up players. That time,
wow.
and that's unheard of. That's unheard of.
Yeah.
But, and that's a story most people don't know. And when Jimmy told me that morning, he said, I'm tired. I'm like, wait, why are you tired? He said, Julian called me and, the plane landed. And I remember, I forgot who it was. Maybe it was Bridget from our staff. Steve Stamkos happened to be in her car, and he wound up giving her a $100 bill.
Wow.
Which he didn't have to do, right? We were doing it.
Sure.
But anyway, I'd love to come back on. I apologize.
No problem at all. We certainly appreciate your time, Howard, and congratulations on 30 excellent seasons in Syracuse, and here's to another 100 more.
Now, I assume both you guys will be there on Saturday?
Yes, we will.
Yes,
absolutely.
definitely.
Well, come over and say hi.
I
Okay.
absolutely will. Absolutely. Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, have a great night. Thank you. All right, Alex, that was awesome.
I'm just trying to picture those players in the Crown Hotel, which was just recently put up for auction, and I don't think anybody wanted it.
Well, that's what makes the minor league so fun, I guess. And that, maybe that's a good reminder for the NHL players. Say, hey,
Right?
This is where
I mean, like the Crunch has since moved on to a very different hotel, but
well,
I'm just trying to picture that, and it's really funny. And I hadn't heard that story before, and honestly, I think that that's too bad, because that really speaks to the relationship between the two teams too. Because I don't know if every AHL team would have been that willingly accommodating. I'm sure begrudgingly they would have done something, because it's what you do, right? Like it's a partnership. But to have every single person be like, yeah, I'll act as a taxi service. Absolutely. I'll take these exhausted, grumpy millionaires over to their crappy hotel room in downtown Syracuse. Sure.
Okay, here you go. I'm just going to leave once we get to the door, though. So you're on your own now. But no, what a phenomenal story. What a phenomenal guy. That was so much fun having him on. It really was.
Yeah, it was. Hopefully, if he does come back, I hope that you'll invite me back on, because I'd love to be able to talk a little bit more and to hear some more of those stories, because those were great.
Absolutely. Alex, anytime you want to come on the show, you are more than welcome. Like I told you, you are the Syracuse Crunch expert. Gotta have you on for Syracuse Crunch shows. Come on,
I appreciate that, but I'm also the only one, expert or not. So it's kind of like when you're like, I'm your favorite kid, and it's like, yeah, you're my only kid. It's sort of that kind of vibe.
Yeah, but it could be worse. So you could be an only child, and the parent says, well, you're really not my favorite, but
Well, true. Like we like the dog better than you.
Exactly. Well, listen, I'll tell you what, let's take a quick break. And then when we come back, we're going to do our season preview. How's that sound?
That sounds fantastic.
All right. We'll be right back.
Visit My Little Falls and stay connected with the latest news, information, and events in the city and the area. Our mission is to generate interest in the community and connect residents in a more meaningful way by facilitating deeper conversations about how these stories will shape the future of the Mohawk Valley. Join thousands of weekly visitors who stay up to date with feature stories, interviews, videos, our event calendar, and print publication, The Mohawk Valley Express. It's about timely local news for the community, keeping citizens informed about important issues, telling about the people who live and work here, and giving locally owned businesses the opportunity to reach a very targeted audience of locals and tourists alike. It's a whole new form of media-rich content developed specifically for today's mobile lifestyle and listeners. You can download our iOS app in the iTunes Store, listen to our podcast, or sign up for our weekly email newsletter. Stop by today. You'll be glad you did.
And we are back for segment 2. And, you know, Alex, I say this every show. Listen to that commercial. That song, to me, is like the Rocky theme song. You know, I listen. I want to go take a lap around the entire block after I never do.
It sounds like the song that a team would come out onto the ice to. Like,
Exactly. Yeah. See that, Dave? See what you're starting now? Hey, you know what? The next time Howard's on, maybe we'll recommend that to him for the goal song.
Hey, I can do that.
I would just like us to go back to Zombie Nation personally. That just holds a special place in my heart. I was kind of hoping that maybe for the 30th anniversary season, at least once they'd surprise us and that song would come on over the PA system, because that was, you know, for a long time. I mean, I think that was everybody's goal song in the 90s, but, you know, Syracuse held on to it right up until they changed it out for something that they had before, the Dropkick Murphys song. And then, as Howard explained, what happened from there. But I just kind of still hope for that one back.
I know it's like in professional wrestling when a wrestler returns and you hear the wrestler's music and you've never heard it in like 10 years. Like, whoa, what's that? You know? But see, Alex, now we got a comment up on the screen here. I know if you listen on Apple or Spotify, you can't see it, but I'm not the only one who thinks you're the expert. As you can see, no one is better than Alex with Crunch coverage. Deanna Weinheimer, I hope I'm saying that correctly. You're absolutely right, Deanna. I'm telling you, for once, I'm actually correct in the majority opinion. Awesome.
Deanna's an only child.
Oh boy, yeah. Thanks, Dave. She made a nice comment, and then you gotta just. Yeah.
She is a wonderful hockey media person in her own right, I must say. And, you know, just in the spirit of partnerships, AHL News Now, check it out. You're gonna love it.
You go. There you go. Excellent. Okay, so let's get going with this season preview because, hey, you know, we're recording here, what is it, Wednesday night? The season's starting in 2 days, Alex. 2 days away from the AHL kicking off. So real quick, we'll just do a very, very brief recap of last season. Then we'll jump right into 23-24. Last season, the Crunch did finish with an overall record of 35, 26, 7, and 4, which was good for 81 points and second place in the North Division. In the playoffs, they were eliminated by Rochester in 5 games, the semifinals of the North Division. Let's see, on the power play last season, they were 18.8%, which was 16th in the league. On the penalty kill, they were 79.9%, which is 23rd. At home, they were 17-11, 7-1. And on the road, they were 18-15, 0-3. And I want to preface this by saying, especially with the AHL, you can take last season's numbers and throw them right out the window.
Oh, yeah. You know, change is the constant in this league. There is nothing that is more constant and more normal than change in the AHL. So when you look at rosters and the changes that have happened, when you look at the Syracuse roster, when you look at any other roster in the North Division, and even just in extending it out to the Eastern Conference and the rest of the league, last year's numbers mean nothing.
Nothing at all.
Whether they were good or bad, it doesn't matter. They mean nothing.
Absolutely, because there's so much upheaval every single season. There really is. So before I bring our first graphic up, which we talked about this before the show started, I'm still trying. I'm learning. Okay, I'm trying to get there. Fortunately, if you're listening on Apple or Spotify or Amazon, you're not going to be able to see it, so that's good. But anyways, one big change that the Syracuse Crunch had is they have a new head coach. Joel Bouchard takes over behind the bench, taking over for Ben Groh. Tell us a little bit about that.
I don't think we will ever fully get the 100% view of what happened here. But I think that it was just, you know, coaches in the AHL don't normally last as long as Ben Groh did. He started coaching in Syracuse in 2016. So that's a long stretch of time, especially for a coach where it seemed like his NHL star was rising every single summer, and yet he just couldn't find the team to take a chance on him. Much like a hockey player that we're probably going to be talking about.
We're going to definitely talk about
a little while here. Some similarities there. But, you know, I think that sometimes after a while, as teams change, as player attitudes and talents change, it gets easier maybe to drown certain messages out. And ever since Gru had taken over, there was always this thing where the Gru effect would kick in, usually around Thanksgiving for whatever reason. And, the team would look kind of rough and everything would be a little scrambly and up in the air. And then it's like they would buy in and they'd start winning and everything would be fine.
Right.
Last season and the season before that, really, it never really happened. And from what we were told, talks to actually have Gru move on started not this past summer, but the summer before. And for whatever reason, they kept him on for another season. He still had a year remaining in his contract this past summer when they actually did part ways, which is why I feel like there's more to this story, just because I don't know why they just didn't finish the year out. Like,
Right.
It's a year left. Why bother? But honestly, I think it's time. And I'm really excited and interested to see what Bouchard has in mind for a team that's really young.
Absolutely.
Almost top to bottom, new to Syracuse, new to the community. There's just a handful of players that were here last season and even fewer than that who have been with Syracuse for more than a season. So I'm excited to see.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, listen, a coach can be the greatest coach in the world, but after a while, there needs to be a new voice in the room, especially if you've got players that have been around that coach for a while, like, oh, we've heard this before. Okay. You got to do that every once in a while. It brings a little bit newer perspective, different way of doing things. And like you said, now you got a really young team. Now's the time to maybe bring that new voice in and see what can happen. So this offseason, there were some losses to the roster. Like we said, there's always upheaval in the AHL. And so I'm going to put up my graphic up there. There it is. All right. So I went through and I took a look. These are the players that actually had significant playing time with the Crunch last year. I see a couple on there that are really jumping out at me. What do you think on that list?
The blue line's looking real thin. And
Yes.
that first name on there, which for those of you who can't see, is Trevor Carrick. He had a hard time finding a groove in Syracuse for whatever reason. But I think that it is going to be challenging to replicate the depth that Syracuse had on defense last season. And that depth became especially important when someone who's not on this list, because he's still in the organization, but he's
Yes.
probably not going to be seeing time with the Crunch when.
And I'm sure you're talking about Darren Reddish.
I am indeed. Thank you. For a second, I blanked on his name. I appreciate the save.
I do that with my kids. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. When Radish was recalled permanently, Syracuse still had Philip Myers, Sean Day, who came in and out of injury, and Trevor Carrick. Now, so it'll be interesting to see what happens with that in particular, should injuries start piling up.
Yes, indeed. Absolutely. Carrick really took off actually in the second half of the season when he got the opportunity. To shine, and he did. He's with the Anaheim organization now. Up until yesterday, the name that was really kind of jumping out at me on this one too was Max Legacy, because he's one of those guys. He's one of those players that he doesn't always put up spectacular numbers, but he's solid.
Mm-hmm.
And especially at the goaltender position, that's what you got to have. You got to have solid consistency. Even if he isn't going to steal every game for you, but he solidified the net for the Crunch. But there was a little bit of a deal made that we're going to talk about in a little bit. So suddenly, at least for the time being, Legacy actually, I think he went to Sweden. Yes, he went over to the SHL in Sweden. So no longer with the Crunch. Anybody else on that list that you want to chat about?
Simon Reifors, I think. And even Rudolph Balsers, those were two players that maybe flew under the radar a little bit. But when you look at the stats and the scoring sheet, one of Syracuse's issues last season was that the depth on scoring wasn't there. Generally, especially with the way Ben Gru coached, you needed to roll at least 3 lines consistently scoring in order to play with the pace and get the team gelling the way he wanted them to. And the Crunch just didn't have that last season, which is one of the reasons why, like, yeah, they ended in second place in the division, but that 81 points is one of the lowest point totals that a Lightning era Crunch team has had.
Right.
Well,
especially towards the last season, they were just beating the crap out of each other in the standings. So that North Division got really tight. And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but
that's okay. Yeah. So it's just, those two in particular were a part of the scoring depth. And with having so many young, fresh faces on the roster this year, it's really going to be fun, to see how that all rolls out and if some of that secondary scoring can start clicking in.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And, we just talked about additions. So why don't we pull up my additions list? I got this via the free agent signing tracker at SyracuseCrunch.com. So hopefully now I'm going to preface this by saying I know Logan Brown is still with the organization, with Tampa, but I put him on there anyways. So, artistic license, I guess you want to say.
Yeah.
Looking at that list, and of course I put Coach Bouchard on there. We've already discussed him. Mitchell Chafee was pretty impressive in the preseason.
Definitely. He was someone who really stood out, especially during that game in Syracuse this past Saturday. I didn't get to pay much attention to the other preseason game Syracuse played in Rochester just because it's preseason and the AHL doesn't do a ton with preseason stuff. But
I wish they did.
Yeah, I know. It's one of my bugaboos, but I also understand, considering the 13 people who were in attendance during Syracuse's preseason game, why it's really hard to make AHL preseason games profitable. And I get that too. Like, I'm one of those people who loves them because I enjoy being able to get back into the arena, being able to see the people that I always see, maybe earlier than the regular season allows us to. So I like preseason, but I'm also a 20-year fan of this team. So, AHL games are fleshed out by your casual fan, and your casual fan's not going to show up to a 5:00 Saturday night preseason game in Syracuse, New York. They're not going to do that, even if tickets are only $5.
Sure. And what's so fun about preseason games is that you'll see some of these players that are going to get sent back down to the ECHL, but you keep it in the back of your head and say, maybe I'll see this kid later on the season.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think in a lot of ways that mirrors the NHL somewhat, just because the NHL, look at how many players got cut prior to this past week and came down to Syracuse. So, it's interesting in that respect, but the AHL, those players in particular tend to be lower in number that get sent down. And so it is good to be able to pay attention to them early, because chances are you are going to be seeing them at some point.
Absolutely. Plus you sound like the super fan to everybody else. Like, hey, wait, I remember this guy. You're like, what? Huh?
Yeah, he played 3 minutes.
I remember him.
October, what was it, the 5th? Is that when we had that game? He played 3 minutes.
And what the best part is? They can't even call you out because they weren't there.
Right? No, they weren't one of the dozen that sat through that game. It was actually a really good game. Honestly, It was probably one of the better preseason tilts I've seen in my time watching this team. So honestly, if you weren't one of those dozen people that were there, well, it's too bad for you, because it was a good game.
Absolutely. Quite intense too for a preseason game.
Well, it was Utica.
Yeah, exactly. And you know that's going to be a battle every single time those two get together. You know what? I think if you put those two teams in a miniature golf contest against each other, it would turn into some kind of brawl or something. So
yeah, something's going up somebody's nose.
Yeah,
for sure, no doubt.
Oh goodness,
Alex and her visuals.
That's
again.
Now I can't get that out of my head. I'll never be able to go miniature golfing again.
You're welcome.
What are friends for, right? So, Alex, now that we've looked at our subtractions and our additions, why don't we take a look at the forward group that's coming in for the Crunch? So these are some of them that I got together. So it's a little difficult right now to get the full picture because the full rosters actually haven't been released yet. But sometimes you got to read between the tea leaves, do a little bit of figuring out here. And of course, the big name, top left corner there, the big news that came through, Alex Boulet, the AHL second leading scorer last year, MVP type season, is back with the Crunch because he actually cleared waivers from Tampa Bay.
Guess who's back? Back again. Can we clear that? Or did I just do a bad job with it so it doesn't even matter?
That's okay.
Probably what happened.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I talked about this on my podcast this past week. I am never someone to be like, boy, I hope that person gets picked up on waivers and we don't get their services. Just want that to happen. I'm never that person.
Right.
But in this case, I was that person. And mostly it's because, and granted, I'm on the outside looking in. I have no idea what's going on with the inner decision making and the communication and anything. But I just don't see what Barry Boulet can do other than what he's done, which from my viewpoint of watching him over all of these seasons, he has worked on everything the Lightning has wanted him to work on. Right. First, it was his two-way game. It was his play in the own zone wasn't strong enough. So he worked on that, and he visibly worked on that. And some of his scoring actually suffered because he was visibly working on that. And then it seemed like, okay, well, then you just have to get consistent again. And so then he worked on that. And I just don't know what else he can do at this point in time in this organization. And I do kind of wish that he would have gotten another chance, but I'm also not going to say no to having him back in Syracuse.
Well, no, I wouldn't think so. But you're so right. And I thought that this season of all the seasons, he would finally get his chance in Tampa Bay because, let's face it, the Lightning are in a cap crunch. Pardon the pun. So they're looking for players on those lower salaries to fill the void, so to speak. There is openings on the Lightning for players like Alex Boulet. But for whatever reason, they sent him back down to Syracuse. I got to believe that he's got to be first in line to come back up if there's if there's an injury in the forward group.
Yeah, I would definitely imagine so, especially looking at the other names. I mean, Gonçalves is probably higher up there. Koepke is higher up there. Both of those gentlemen were on the bubble last year in particular with if they were even going to be sent back to Syracuse. So, I would think that they're going to be up there too. I always think too, especially with the Lightning, it seems to depend on who and what they're actually looking for, because I think that's why Barry Boulet hasn't gotten a ton of call-up time. Is fourth line minutes isn't going to do anything for him.
Right. Exactly.
A player like Koepke or Gonçalves that's trying to make their mark, absolutely. Fourth line minutes in the NHL, but better than playing second line minutes in the AHL any day.
Sure.
But like Barry Boulet, again, what does he have left to prove?
Exactly. And obviously the Lightning think he's got value because they went and got him back from the Seattle Kraken when they cleaned him on waivers the last time through a couple years ago. So,
and granted, like him and Dumont have fantastic chemistry. It was amazing watching them play together last season, and I'm hopeful that can be replicated this season. But I'm sure it's a little bit of a disappointment to him to be back in Syracuse because I'm sure that this wasn't what he was planning on.
Oh, probably not. I mean, of course, you want to play in the NHL. That's the end goal, really. But you mentioned a couple names I want to talk about next. Cole Koepke and Gage Gonçalves. To me, those are two particular players that I think the Crunch are going to need to take the next step this season.
Yes, I agree. And especially when you think about the fact that they were like, will they make the NHL or won't they just a year ago? And now they were pretty much like, yeah, no, you're being sent down this season. There wasn't really a will they or won't they. So right. I really think that they're being looked at in particular as they need to make the most out of this season. They need to push themselves, and they should be earning minutes right up there on that first line, depending on, what the coaching staff sees and what chemistry they see going on. But they should be right up there in the front.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And, just with the forward group, looking at it, thank goodness Daniel Walcott came back.
I still want to know what happened there because he signed so late into the summer. So I don't know if he was just like, if he wasn't sure if he was coming back, if he was holding out for a two-way deal. I don't know, but he took the AHL deal, and much like Dumont, he was like, no, I know where I want to be. I want to play in Syracuse. I don't want to deal with waivers. I don't want to deal with call-ups. I just want to be here. And if I'm going to continue playing, this is what I'm going to do, which is great for the community in particular. It's great for the dressing room. It's great for the fans. But honestly, the Syracuse community benefits so much from everything Walcott does.
Absolutely.
And from what I've been told, he does a lot more than what is publicized because he doesn't want it publicized. So that's why we want AHL teams in our communities, is because of what these players do for the communities. And he's that type of player.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you can just tell he loves being a part of it all. He's just one of those special players that every team wants a Daniel Walcott on their team.
Yeah, and you might hate playing against him. I'm pretty sure
that's
there's
true,
quite a few teams out there that can't stand playing against him. But if they had him on the team, they'd understand.
Yes, absolutely. All right, Alex. So let's take a look at the defenseman here. So there it is. And again, I apologize for the overlap on the graphic there. I'm learning all this. So
I think they look great. Give yourself a break. I think they look fantastic.
Well, thank you. We're getting there. We're getting there. I'll tell you this. It's a lot better than anything I would have done last year. Let's put it that way. So, and Dave just rolled his eyes so hard, I think they hit the ceiling. So,
all right. I'm going to stop my camera for 2 seconds because I have to plug in my computer, but I'm still here. I promise.
Okay. Absolutely. Absolutely. So we've already talked about a couple of the losses that the Crunch have faced from their defense corps, right? With the loss of Radish, with the loss of Carrick. Philippe Myers is back. Let's see. Sean Day is back. Declan Carlisle enters his second season after a fantastic rookie season. What do you think? What are you thinking about this defense corps here?
They're babies. They're so little.
Yeah.
I stood next to Sean Day and he's not so little. I can tell you that right now. No way.
Well, as someone who is about 5'4", I get what you're saying. But man, it is a very young group of gentlemen. I like to refer to our veterans as the elder statesmen of the group, because I just feel like you have our veteran corps, guys like Myers and Walcott and Dumont, and guys who have been, around the block a couple of times. Mm-hmm. And then you have everybody else that are like just so young. And this group is definitely exemplary of that, because Myers and Day are 150% the elder statesmen, and
everybody else better be carrying their ID with them at all times.
Yeah, exactly. Like, there is no Trevor Carrick this year. There is no Darren Radish this year. Like, this is what Syracuse has right now. I'm a little nervous about it, but on the other side of things, we do have like Carlisle and Thompson, who showed a lot of promise and came really far last season in particular. Devontae Stevens is also not a stranger to the organization. Right. So he's a known solid entity on the blue line, which will be helpful. So that's a positive out of this group. And from what I saw in that Saturday game, everybody, all of the kids, and I use that term, very figuratively, but still, they look hungry and they look eager to make an impression. And, this group is no different. There's no exceptions here from that.
Right. Absolutely. And, my first thought when I took a look at this to me is Sean Day's chance to reestablish himself as the number one in Syracuse. Mm-hmm. I know he's been battling injuries for a bit, but this really is the chance right here to, come back and say, yeah, I'm Sean Day. I'm the number one defenseman here.
Yeah. And he's on one of those like famous, your ELC is done. Here's your show me year contract. So show me what you're going to do with it. And you're absolutely right. Like, this is his chance to shine a little bit and stand out and, either prove to the Lightning that he's ready to make that jump, although hopefully not too soon.
Yeah, right.
Or else this group is really going to be little. And I don't mean in numbers. Or, show another organization that he's ready for that. So I agree with you 100%.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Young, but like you said, hungry. And I'll tell you something, when you got a hungry group of players, that can make a tremendous difference.
Absolutely. In fact, a lot of the characters that Howard just referred to when he was talking with us, those were all players that if I had to pick a characteristic that they all had in common, it was hunger.
Right. Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. So last but not least, why don't we take a look at the goaltenders, which that situation changed a couple days ago. Of course, Hugo Alnefeld's coming back. And I'll tell you, he just seems to get better every single season. It's hard to believe that he's got 3 seasons under his belt already, in all reality. But there we are. And now the big one here, and it's funny because I listened to your podcast and you did the same exact thing I did. It's like, oh my goodness, how am I going to pronounce this? So now I'm going to give it a shot.
Porter Kochetkov.
Yeah. Or Dave can too. That's even better.
I was going to say, every time we need to say it, we'll stop.
Yeah.
He'll say it, and then we'll keep talking.
Yeah, do it again.
Porter Kochetkov.
Okay. I was going to say Piotr.
No,
Kochetkov.
Porter.
Piotr. Okay,
Say
like
Porter.
okay. Well, that'll work too.
Kochetkov.
Kochetkov. Let's just say Kochetkov.
No,
okay?
that's Kochetkov.
Okay, that
Not
too.
Chekhov. It's not Star Trek.
Star Trek. What?
Yeah, Chekhov. Jeez.
Okay. Well.
Alex.
All right.
Get him.
But at any rate, that really solidifies the net for the Crunch. And I'll tell you, the Crunch really benefited from somehow, some way. Carolina does not have an AHL affiliate. A lot has been made about Chicago going independent, kind of leaving Carolina out in the cold. But it happened. I mean, and that's one of those things. I don't think we'll ever get the real full story about that either, to be perfectly honest with you. But at any rate, hey, it benefits the Crunch. And, I guess at the very least, they haven't got to worry about Tampa Bay calling him up because he's not on a Tampa Bay contract. So there you go. Right?
Yeah. This was like, I expected if anything was going to happen, that Lightning would have done something for them. Just, as before the show, we were talking about how with Andrei Vasilevsky down and out until probably about Christmas at this point in time, that hurts for sure. And, it created a very unexpected situation in the organization. And with goalies in particular, the shockwaves are felt all throughout because organizations usually only carry 5 goaltenders. So if one goes down, especially the one at the very top,
sure,
it really changes the way things look.
Absolutely.
So, I really did. I expected the Lightning to do their usual cap magic and figure out a way to whatever they do to make it work. And they did that, but instead it's Syracuse that gets to benefit. And from everything I've read about this gentleman right here, whose name.
Yes. Mr. K.
Yes. From everything I've read, like he had the potential to be with Carolina this season. So, I'm going to be fascinated to see how this tandem is going to work, because obviously Alnefelt is the Lightning's priority. Alnefelt is the next one up. Alnefelt is the draftee. Alnefelt is here for 3 seasons now. So,
right.
But I also can't imagine having such talent just sitting night after night. That seems like that would be kind of a waste. So I'm going to be fascinated to see how the coaching staff decides to work this. And it's definitely a good problem to have. but it's also a very interesting one.
It is, because you got to wonder how that conversation went, right? Because I'm
Right?
sure Carolina management wants him to play as much as possible. But on the other hand, like you just said, obviously on the fault is the Lightning's priority. So that's going to be very interesting. And it'll also be interesting to see how long it lasts.
Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
as we know, Carolina's goaltenders tend to get hurt a lot. So, you know, we don't know. This could last a few months. This could last a few days. We just don't know.
Yeah.
But it'll certainly be fun while it does.
Yeah. And like, this is why we don't see dual affiliations in this, you know, NHL, AHL partnership anymore, because you end up with questions like this.
Absolutely.
You know, well, who gets priority? You know, the almost NHLer from another organization or the draftee from the parent club, and they both need to play. They both need time. Who gets the priority? And, you know, it definitely makes things more complicated having an NHL club without a farm team this season. You know, I think that this conversation around independent teams versus independently owned, as the Crunch is, you know,
Sure.
we just had their owner. I think that that's a fascinating little side project that, you know, we could make 3 podcast episodes about.
Oh, for sure.
Because the nuance there is different, but yet not. So this has created a really like fascinating soap opera.
I know, right?
In the background of this whole season.
It's the AHL version of As the World Turns.
Exactly. Yeah, like I referred to Chicago earlier today as the island of misfit toys, because I kind of feel like that's like their like configuration right now. Is they have some really great veterans like Corey Conacher, and then they have other guys, and I don't know who those other guys are, but they're there and they're going to play hockey, but they don't have anywhere to go with this. And so it's kind of strange.
You do realize now I'm not going to be able to stop thinking about A, miniature golf and where the clubs could end up. And now B, like the Jack in the Box and the elephant that didn't quite fit in at the Island Misfit Toys. Oh, this is going to be great. Oh man, this is why I love having you on the show so much. See? Oh boy. And I do believe that the third goaltender is Matt Tompkins. I didn't see anything to indicate otherwise. I did check out the Orlando Solar Bears website. There's nothing to indicate that there, but again, kind of difficult right now because the rosters aren't officially released. So we're doing a little detective work.
Yeah. So Tompkins is up with the Lightning, actually.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go.
Yeah. So that's why
I screwed that up. Okay. Well,
that's how they worked that out. And then was it Evan Fitzgerald? Was that?
Yes. Fitzpatrick.
Thank you.
He went to Orlando. Right.
Yes. There you go. Yeah.
Now see.
Yes.
And I thought I looked at that on Cap Friendly and I probably went right by it too. But this is exactly why I'm not a detective. See.
Well, and to be fair, the Lightning's Cap Friendly is a little bit of a disaster right now because they have so many like long-term injured reserve players.
Right.
And season opening injured reserved players and buried penalties in the minors and dead cat. I mean, it's a little bit of a hot mess right now. So I'm not surprised that your eyes just went right over it.
You know, not to mention they don't even have enough cap space to buy a candy bar. So that's.
They have $3. Thank you very much.
There you go. See,
that's enough to buy like a fun size pack of M&Ms or.
No,
right.
Have you seen the prices these
Something?
days? No.
I honestly, I haven't. I Instacart everything and I don't know what I pay.
You know, you do have to pay for Instacart, right?
I know the total, but that also includes Instacart. So I don't know how much my individual groceries are.
Yeah, it's always fun. You know what, Alex? Let's close this out by just taking a quick look at the promotional schedule because I mean this is the 30th anniversary.
Are you sure you want to do this? Because I'm really excited about it.
Why not? You know, I'm looking. I'm seeing 90s night, and I got to ask you. Now I know you're going to be there because it's a Saturday night. So are you going to be in 90s garb by chance? Are you going to be dressed up like a performing act from the 90s?
How can you tell?
So actually, the last time they did 90s night, I want to say it was for the 25th anniversary season. I actually borrowed flannel from my dad and did the whole like flannel tie up with the white tank top on underneath it from like the mid 90s.
Yeah, the grunge movement.
Exactly. This time around, I am thrilled to say that flared jeans are back. So I don't even have to raid someone else's closet. I can just go to Maurice's and buy a pair of flared jeans and I'm good to
Perfect.
go.
Perfect. You know, Dave said he wanted to celebrate that night too by coming as one of the Backstreet Boys. So
that's close to my heart. You know,
there you go. See,
I can do that.
Oh boy.
I can see that.
But you know, looking up and down this, I mean, besides the usual great promotional nights they have, I'm looking at this one in particular, the Syracuse Canal Mules Night. And if we had a little bit more time with Howard, I was going to ask him about that because that is certainly unique. The one thing I just hope they don't do is bring a mule out on the ice.
I don't know.
That could get a little tricky.
Canal mules. That must have been like the mules that pulled the barges along the canal.
I'm assuming, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
Yes, and it was interesting because not a lot of people outside of Central New York, and I even had a couple like my friends from that I grew up with. They were like, "What is a canal mule?" And
I just want to know how to. I just want to know how to dress for that. I'm sorry, I just can't. In my head,
easy. You dress up as Donkey from Shrek.
No. We get a horse suit. You've got the front half on. I've got the back.
Oh, jeez.
I don't know.
We will never be allowed back in the building ever again.
There's a lot of species being thrown here right now, none of which are mules.
That's true. But
I know, but how many people in that auditorium are going to know what the difference is? Right?
Yeah, that's a point.
That's a point. Yeah.
That's a point.
And just one more before we go. I see they got superhero night. Alex, who's the superhero? Who are you dressing up as?
Can I talk about a different one instead?
Okay, absolutely.
Wonder Woman. Come on.
So I have been begging this team for about a decade now to do a wizarding night.
Oh.
And I was.
Are they doing one?
They are indeed.
Oh.
It is. It's right there.
It's in January. And I actually did a whole podcast episode, if you'd like to go back and find it in the Syracuse Speaks playlist, on what they could do for a wizarding night, because I didn't want to be begging for this thing and not give them any ideas. So I am extremely excited to have two of my most favorite things in the world. Obviously, the night's not branded because copyright, and I don't want to get sued. But, having some Harry Potter coming into my hockey arena as a very proud Hufflepuff makes me extremely excited.
That is awesome. And ironically, they're playing the Cleveland Monsters that night. So
perfect.
It's so perfect. It really is.
Yeah, my precious.
Well, and absolutely, that's the thing, right? It's not branded. So
that's right. That's right.
Gandalf, who cares? Absolutely.
Oh boy. Well, Alex, this has been so much fun. Like I said, every time you're on the show, it's fun. My sides hurt from laughing so much. It's great. Please tell us a little bit about the Syracuse Speaks podcast, where we can find it, the whole works.
So Syracuse Speaks is available on all of the major podcasting platforms. You can find it on Google, Apple. It's also on Amazon. You can find it anywhere you can get your podcasts. It's usually about a half an hour to 45 minutes long, about twice a month. And I generally keep it to what's going on in Crunchland at that period in time. I know that there's other podcasts out there that throw it back a little bit, but I keep it very much to the present and a little bit into the future. And any transactions, anything that's going on with the Lightning, any upcoming games, theme nights, all of that kind of stuff. And every now and then I have guests on, although right now that's slightly on pause as I try to figure out some technical difficulties of, ironically enough, also going independent this past summer.
It's funny how that just keeps coming back around.
It does. So that cut down a little bit on my resources, but once I figure that aspect out, I will start having guests back on again too.
That is awesome. And like I said, if you're a Syracuse Crunch fan, or heck, even just a hockey fan, do yourself a favor, subscribe to this podcast, follow this podcast, and as always, listen to it because it's always an awesome show. Alex, thank you so very much. We so appreciate it. And again, such a great time every time you're on.
Thank you so much for having me. I will come on whenever you are willing to listen to me. Just put images in your head all night long.
Absolutely, which
still the golf ball.
I know, right?
My nose. Yep.
I'm
done with
I'm
that.
not gonna, and I'm probably gonna picture the Jack in the Box from the Island of Misfit Toys doing it too. Just bang. Oh boy. Well, anyways, thank you, Alex Ackerman, and thank you to Howard Dolgon for coming on the show tonight. So for Dave the Save Warner, I'm Scott Kimball. Thanks for listening, and we will see you next time on the Central New York Hockey Report.